The subway lights flickered as a crowd rushed past, unaware of the girl who sat frozen near the edge of the platform. Her hand moved, not randomly. 3 fingers up, then folded into a fist, then an open palm. Jonathan Roumie, walking from a charity shoot, stopped mid-step. His heart jolted. He'd seen that signal before. It wasn't a wave. It was a whisper for help, the universal SOS victims use when speech isn't safe. The girl looked down, motionless, but her hand repeated the gesture, slow, controlled, desperate. Jonathan's instincts fired. He looked around. No one else noticed. Or worse, they did, and ignored it. He took a deep breath, stepped closer, calm but alert. "Hey," he said gently, "you okay?" Her eyes met his, wide, hollow, waiting for something good to believe in. She barely nodded. Behind her, a man in a heavy coat stepped out of the shadows. Watching, Jonathan's body tensed. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was about to become something real. Before we continue, we'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. The man's eyes tracked Jonathan, slow, like a predator measuring distance before the pounce. Jonathan stepped between the girl and the figure, pretending not to notice him, but every nerve lit like a warning flare. "Where are your parents?" Jonathan asked softly. The girl didn't answer. Her lip trembled, but her eyes said everything. "She's with me," the man growled, stepping forward. His voice was cold, too smooth. Something was off. Jonathan didn't blink. "That true?" he asked the girl, never looking away from her eyes. She shook her head, the smallest, quietest denial Jonathan had ever seen. But it was enough. Jonathan's body turned. Calm on the surface, storm underneath. "You need to back off," he said evenly. The man laughed bitterly. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Jonathan's tone didn't change. Someone who saw her signal. And someone who won't walk away. Around them, the subway kept roaring past. But now, people were starting to notice that a teenage boy across the platform pulled out his phone. A woman clutched her purse tighter. A father pulled his child closer. People were watching now, unsure what this was, but sensing the tension. "She's just my niece," the man insisted, voice shaking now. "She gets nervous around strangers." "Then why'd she signal for help?" Jonathan asked flatly. "That's not nerves. That's survival." The man's mask cracked, for just a moment. His eyes twitched with panic. "You don't know what you're talking about," he spat, stepping toward them again. Jonathan raised his voice slightly. "Step back." The echo of it bounced off the concrete walls. A subway worker peeked out from a booth. "Everything all right?" she called nervously. "Call transit police," Jonathan said. "Now." The man took one final look, then turned and bolted. Down the stairs. Cowardice fleeing the light. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. But when the man disappeared, she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. Jonathan sat beside her. Not too close. Not too far. Just near enough to not feel alone. "You're safe now," he said gently. "He's not coming back." The subway worker brought water. The girl's hands trembled as she held it, but she took a sip. "Do you want to tell me your name?" Jonathan asked. She nodded slowly. "Tiana," she whispered. Her voice was soft, like a bird singing through a cracked window. But it was brave. "You did something very strong today, Tiana," Jonathan said. "That signal, it saved you." Tiana looked at him, unsure if she should believe it. But part of her already did. And for the first time in a long while, she let herself feel safe. Transit officers arrived within minutes. They asked gentle questions. Jonathan stayed beside her the whole time. Tiana explained slowly how she'd been taken from a foster home weeks ago, how no one had looked for her. She wasn't even sure if anyone knew she was gone. The man had picked her up after school one day, said he was a friend of the family. But once the doors shut, she knew something was wrong. He kept her in a small basement room, took her out once a day, always watched, always angry. Why today? An officer asked gently. Why now? Because he got lazy, she whispered. Let go of my wrist. I remembered that signal from a TikTok video. Jonathan sat stunned. A digital whisper saved a real girl's life. And now, her story was just beginning. The police offered Tiana a ride to a safe center. Jonathan asked if she wanted him to. Come. She nodded without speaking. Wrapped in a donated blanket, Tiana sat in the back seat, clinging to the silence like a security blanket. You okay back there? The officer asked gently. She didn't answer, but her hand shifted slightly toward Jonathan's. Jonathan didn't speak either. Sometimes safety isn't loud, it's simply presence. The drive was quiet. Streetlights flickered like stars through dirty windows. Tiana finally spoke. Do people ever believe you when you're just a kid? Jonathan turned. I believe you. Not because you're a kid, because you were brave enough to ask for help. Her lips pressed together, trying not to smile. She failed. The officer watched through the mirror. She's strong, he whispered. Jonathan nodded. Stronger than most adults I know. And for the first time that night, she closed her eyes and slept. Tiana arrived at the safe house past midnight. A woman named Ms. Carr greeted her with warmth and cocoa. Jonathan stayed back as they welcomed her in. But she turned before going inside. Will you visit? She asked. Quiet, unsure. Jonathan smiled. Every time they let me. The door closed behind her, and he stood still for a long moment. He didn't cry, but his chest ached, not from sadness, but from witnessing something raw and real. Inside, Tiana looked at the soft bed and clean pajamas. She hesitated like it was a trap. Miss Carr knelt. It's yours, sweet girl, for as long as you need it. Tiana slowly walked to the bed, fingers brushing the sheets. And when she sat down, she didn't let go of the blanket Jonathan gave her. The video hit the internet by morning. Just 20 seconds. But it hit like thunder. It showed Jonathan stepping in front of the girl, unflinching. The man backing off. The comments exploded. That's the Jesus actor. That little girl used the SOS signal. People started searching, sharing stories, explaining what the signal meant. Teachers played it in classrooms. Moms showed it to daughters. If one child learns to use that gesture, Jonathan said on an interview, we did something right. He didn't want credit, but the world saw him anyway. The hashtag signal saved her started trending. Meanwhile, Tiana slept soundly for the first time in weeks. And somewhere, other silent hands began learning the sign. Tiana didn't talk much in the first week, but she drew constantly, sketch after sketch of that subway scene. In each drawing, Jonathan stood beside her like a tall tree, strong and quiet. He's like a lighthouse, she told her counselor. Doesn't move, just shines. Ms. Carr gave her a journal. Write when you don't want to talk. Her first words, I didn't disappear. Someone saw me. The other kids slowly warmed up to her. She shared her blanket, told them the signal. One little boy asked, what if no one comes? She replied, someone will. Someone always does. If you don't give up. Jonathan visited once a week. No cameras, just time. And every time he left, she'd draw another page in her book. The police caught him, days later, hiding in an abandoned motel. He had 2 other warrants. Tiana watched the news with no expression, but her hand gripped her sketchbook tighter. They can't hurt me again, she whispered. Miss Carr nodded. That's right. When asked if she wanted to testify, she didn't hesitate. Yes, I want them to hear me this time. Jonathan sent her a letter before the hearing. Your courage changes more than laws. It changes people. The trial was hard. Long days. Questions. Flashbacks. But she told her story, clear, honest, brave. And when the jury convicted him, she didn't celebrate. She just exhaled. Justice didn't feel like winning. It felt like breathing again. And Tiana kept breathing. Journalists called him a hero. Social media flooded with praise. But Jonathan? He kept quiet. It wasn't about me, he told a reporter. She saved herself. I just listened. He turned down interviews, declined awards, donated all gifts to foster centers. What stayed with him wasn't the fame, it was the look in her eyes. When she knew she was safe. That moment, that mattered more than applause. In a journal entry, he wrote, "Silence is where the real work begins." And every time he passed a child alone, he paid closer attention. He didn't need to be seen, just needed to see. Real power, he learned, is quiet, steady, invisible, like breath. And that kind of power can save the world. Her school invited her to speak during Safety Awareness Week. She almost said no, but then she remembered that little boy's question, "What if no one comes?" So she said yes. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. The gym was full. Even Jonathan sat quietly in the back. "I'm not brave every day," she began, "but I was brave one time. And that's enough." She told them about the signal, the moment, the fear, and the hand that reached back. "He didn't save me. I saved me. He just didn't ignore me." Thunderous applause followed, but it was the tears in the janitor's eyes that hit hardest. "My daughter ran away once," he whispered to Jonathan. "If only someone saw her." That night, dozens of kids learned the SOS signal. Dozens more felt a little less invisible that a woman named Lorna saw Tiana's speech online. Her fingers shook as she wrote the letter. "My niece is missing," she wrote, "and I almost stopped hoping. Until I saw Tiana." She mailed it to the safe house. Didn't expect a reply, just needed to speak into the silence. Tiana read the letter, quietly folded it, then took out her sketchbook. She drew a map, titled it, "Where Hope Might Be." "Can we help her?" she asked. Ms. Carr smiled through tears. "You already are." The staff contacted local shelters, shared the girl's photo, connected Lorna with advocates. A week later, her niece was found. Lorna sent another letter. "Thank you. I saw you." And then I believed again. One whisper had traveled miles. One voice had pulled another back from the edge. With help from Jonathan and the center, Tiana created something new, a small book filled with signals, stories, and art. They called it the Book of Signals. It wasn't just about the SOS sign, it was about noticing, responding, believing. Other kids contributed. Some wrote poems. Some drew fears. Some just scribbled colors. It wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. They printed 300 copies and sent them to foster centers, schools, and shelters. Each had a note inside. "You are not alone." The project won awards, but more importantly, it won hearts. A teacher in Ohio said, "I've never seen my class so quiet, so awake." The book was a lighthouse, built by survivors for the ones still at sea. Tiana's birthday arrived. Her first one celebrated outside of fear. She invited Jonathan. No cameras, no guests, just peace. "I used to wish I disappeared," she told him, licking frosting from her fingers. "But now," he asked, "now I want to leave light behind. When I go." They ate cake under a tree, laughed about nothing. Jonathan gave her a journal, empty pages waiting for her future. Inside was one note. "You're not a story someone saved. You're the story that saves others." She hugged him, not as a hero, as a friend. And that hug was the softest moment of the year. Months later, a talk show invited them both. Tiana hesitated, but Jonathan said, "Only if you want to. You lead." She thought about the girl she used to be, the signal, the silence, then nodded. "Let's go." On stage, the host asked, "How did you stay calm?" Tiana answered, "I didn't. I just remembered I had one chance to be seen." The audience sat still. Some wiped tears. Some held hands. Everyone listened. Jonathan simply said, "She taught us what to do. I just followed." After the show, kids lined up outside with drawings, notes, and signs they'd learned. One mother whispered, "My daughter watches this clip every morning before school." Tiana signed books, not as a celebrity, as a survivor who shared her map. The spotlight faded, but the glow stayed behind. Tiana returned to the station where it all began. Alone, this time, but never lonely. She sat on the same bench, quiet, watching, breathing. The lights flickered again, but they didn't scare her anymore. A little boy sat across from her, fidgeting nervously. She smiled gently, and he calmed. "You okay?" she asked, echoing Jonathan's words from long ago. "I get nervous," he whispered. She nodded. "Me too sometimes. Just remember, brave things don't always feel brave." The train came. He stood taller. She stood too. As the doors closed behind her, she left behind something invisible: presence. That bench would never feel the same again. That a foundation tried to honor Jonathan for his heroic act. He declined it quietly. Instead, he asked, "Can you give it to someone else?" "Who?" they asked. "Her," he replied. "She's the reason we're even talking." They mailed it to Tiana, who gasped when she opened the package. "I didn't win anything," she said. Miss Carr smiled. "Exactly. That's why it matters." Tiana placed it on her bookshelf beside her sketches, journal, and a small rock that said "Keep noticing." She wrote Jonathan a note. "This belongs to all of us who stayed standing. But thank you for showing up." He never displayed the medal. But her words? He framed them. Because words given freely are sometimes the only awards that matter. Years passed. The story faded from headlines, but never from hearts. Tiana's book was taught in schools. Shelters displayed her story in art rooms. Survivors found hope. In the signal, some in the silence, many in her voice. Jonathan visited centers in new cities. Quietly, listening, holding space. They stayed in touch. Sometimes just with letters. Sometimes with silence that said enough. "You changed me," she once wrote. "Not into someone new, into someone true." And that was more than enough. They never chased the spotlight again, just kept walking where light was needed. One signal, one hand, one moment created ripple after ripple. And what they left behind wasn't noise. It was stillness that taught. On her 18th birthday, Tiana finished her second journal. She wrote only one sentence: "I was seen. I stayed." No fireworks, no headlines, just peace. She applied to study child advocacy. Said she wanted to be the one who sees. At graduation, she wore a bracelet with one word etched inside: notice. Jonathan sat in the audience, clapping quietly, proud but unassuming. After the ceremony, she hugged him tightly and whispered, "You didn't save me. You believed me. That saved everything." He nodded, eyes glassy. "And you believed in yourself." They walked outside. The sky clear, the wind calm, the world possible. And somewhere nearby, someone else learned the signal, just in case. What did you think of Tiana and Jonathan's story? How did it inspire you? And where are you watching this from? Drop your thoughts and location in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that shine a light on courage and hope. Your support helps us keep sharing these powerful moments.